This AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, images, layout, everything, including the content.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. It's now becoming like a bi-weekly thing. So today's webinar, we're going to look at the tech sector. Thank you so much for making the time, for registering, for taking out your precious time to be here. And I really hope that we'll be able to add value to you. Hopefully you'll take away some things. We have a lot to share with you. And yeah, so I think we can start. I guess the others will just join in. Okay, so maybe talk a little bit about myself and about Shikana. for those that are here for the first time, and those who don't know who I am or who we are. But Shikana Group is an investment and advisory firm that's located in Tanzania, Kenya, Switzerland, and we basically focus on foreign investment that is coming from all over the world. We deal with multinational companies, but also startups, well-funded startups, family offices, governments as well, that basically want to invest in Eastern and Southern African markets. Why are these the markets that we focused on? Of course, I'm Tanzanian. The company was started in Tanzania, and also undeniably, East Africa is the fastest growing region in Africa. So definitely it makes sense to focus on the East African market. We also work with local companies, African companies, in getting them investment ready. So these are SMEs mainly. We also work with startups. We also work with tech startups as well. So we have a lot of experience in this. I myself am a lawyer, investment advisor, entrepreneur. I've been working now for over a decade in African markets, and working with foreign investors and facilitated a number of transactions of foreign investors that are investing in namely tech companies, but also myself as an angel investor. I've invested in some companies as well. And I've also worked with Tanzanian and African actually companies that basically need to get investment ready so that they can, get funding or grow, scale their businesses. So this is me in a nutshell. I also wrote a book. I recently became an author, guys. Clap, clap for me. So I wrote this book that is actually very, very much relevant for entrepreneurs, business owners that are looking to build their legal systems in their company, just basically for growth. And yeah, so the link is gonna go in the chat right now so that you can see if you want to purchase it. I think it's a game changer, but we'll also talk a little bit about it as we continue with the webinar. So let's like just do let's look at the Tanzanian's tech sector. So right now, Tanzania is being guided by the National Development Plan for 2025. And of course, this is soon going to be succeeded by the National Development Vision, of 2050. And really outlines this roadmap for transforming the country into an industrialized economy. But also, it's very evident that technology, especially because Tanzania is not in this little bubble or in an island, the world is embracing technology and digital technology, digital transformation. And so Tanzania is part of the world, and therefore this has to be a preoccupation. So I am an expert actually on the one of the experts for the technical committee for drafting the National Development Vision 2050. And in our work, we were really looking at what the role of technology is going to be. And I think it is very obvious that technology is really a major driver of progress, especially if you're looking from 2025 to 2050. So in fact, the government is also in the final stages of releasing a 10-year plan for the National Digital Economy Framework, DEF, that started in 2023 and goes all the way until 2033. So this is really like a 10-year plan. So some of I think the things that we need to understand, I guess, with regards to tech and and kind of why we are why we are here, we need to understand what the key drivers of growth are. And some of these key drivers is, of course, the telecommunications. There is an amazing mobile telephone penetration rate that has surpassed, I think, 100%. And this really enables a broad access to the population, and also a broad access to mobile money services, which has been a total game changer, I would say, in the tech sector. And so this has expanded the customer base for tech ventures, and also just really democratizing access to digital goods and services. But another major driver has been the internet connectivity. So Tanzanian government has been undergoing massive investments in internet infrastructure, probably over the last two decades. Particularly fiber optic networks have improved connectivity across Tanzania. And this growth is obviously really vital for expanding to things like e-commerce, or digital services, or even online learning platforms, which are some of the things that we're seeing in the tech sectors in Tanzania and also just in Africa. But another key driver is also the software development. So there's so much talent in Tanzania. I have to say, I meet so many young people that are just really like passionate about software development, and there's been a massive rise in software development and the talent as well, which is really driven by the young population. And we're also seeing that there are training programs also that really are empowering the local tech companies to create solutions for various sectors, enhancing innovation in the market. So I think it's important also to know that, you know, tech for just the sake of tech has no meaning. But tech, if it's for good, or tech if it's to solve some of the pressing issues that exist in the country, then it becomes something that is really a tool for transformation and empowerment. Another key driver is B2B e-commerce. So we're really seeing that B2B e-commerce is really emerging as a significant growth driver. I've always said that the money is not in the B2C, it's in the B2B. We saw recently, I think, a company that a lot of Tanzanians are very proud of and, you know, really following, Nala, for example. They started as a B2C company, and now they've actually expanded to a B2B. And so B2B e-commerce is really like emerging as a significant growth driver. And you have platforms like Sarafu facilitating online transactions between businesses, and also just streamlining procurement processes and improving logistics. So what we have seen actually is that because of these key trends, and you know, that have kind of created this vibrant ecosystem in Tanzania, growing and budding vibrant ecosystem in Tanzania when it comes to tech, we're actually seeing that now the government is looking at developing the ICT policy, and this really confirms the sector's growing importance in Tanzanians' economy. But also, I think it's important to know ICT alone accounted for 1.5% of Tanzanians' nominal GDP in 2023, and there's an expectation basically for that to just keep, you know, to just keep growing. And I mentioned before the digital economy framework, the DEF. This is set to the implementation is set to start, I think, this year, and this is going to be just even more of a game changer for the technology sector, where you're really going to see that. I think that we're going to see that there's going to be massive growth, massive changes because of this implementation of the digital economy framework that is actually there for a period of 10 years. So, okay, we spoke about the key drivers. Let's now look more into I guess, the drivers individually, but the telecommunications influence, right? So mobile telephony has achieved remarkable penetration rates, like we say. So this means that there are more mobile subscriptions than people actually in Tanzania. Although I think that this has been the government has tried to deal with this situation by basically stating that one individual cannot have more than one line in a given telco operator. At least this was, I think, back in 2018 that it was put in place. But that's the reality. People know that people in Tanzania are having several subscriptions to several mobile telcos. But also mobile money has just been such a major game changer because it really has opened doors for tech ventures, because it's just made payments to be just so much easier. And yes, so that remains easier in Tanzania. We're seeing also other companies that are coming up that are kind of creating those solutions for cross-border payments, which is still a problem. Meaning that, you know, if you're in DRC and, you know, how do you transact via your mobile in South Africa or in Egypt, for example, that connectivity when it comes to mobile money is still lacking or lagging behind. And I think there's going to be more and more tech companies that are going to come in that space and really try and offer solutions for that because it's inevitable. We have the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and agreements. This is not some theory or yet another document that's just going to be shelved in. There's a number, I think we're over 40 countries now have ratified. There's the testing phase that's already taking place. There are companies that are actually testing all of these mechanisms and frameworks in place. So this is happening. So if that is happening, how do we also integrate the payment systems across the 54 countries in Africa? So I think that we're going to really see a lot of companies, more and more companies that are going to go into that space and really try and provide these kind of solutions. But we're also seeing that value-added services, VAS services, have extended also the mobile technologies reach into everyday life, but also platforms like M-Pesa and Tigo Pesa, they really do enable the average consumer. Also, even for tech companies to just be able, to be able to ensure that they get the payments in a smooth way. I think we know that in business, that we understand what the sales cycle is, but when you close a deal, you know, you don't actually close a deal until you get paid. And sometimes in Africa, it's a little bit complicated. But with the M-Pesa and Tigo Pesa and the like, this has really been a game changer for a lot of entrepreneurs. On the issue of internet connectivity, we see that there's like the rollout of fiber optic networks. This has been led by Tanzania Telecommunications Company, TTCL, and that has really increased the broadband availability, especially in the urban areas. And we're really seeing an emergence of data centers operated by companies like Raxio that is really strengthening the country's digital infrastructure and supports cloud-based services, which is really something that we're seeing more and more upcoming, let's say, digital data centers. The dominating country in Africa that was dominating in the data center sector is South Africa, but we're also seeing that Kenya, for example, is investing heavily in data centers. And I think that this trend, especially in Tanzania with the Data Protection Act and that kind of all those compliance requirements around data and data usage, we are going to see more and more data centers that are going to come up because the opportunity, you know, is really there. Another thing which I had mentioned, which is the software development trend. So yeah, local tech companies, I think, are really increasingly developing software solutions that are really tailored to address specific challenges in various sectors. And we're really seeing this in agriculture, but we're also seeing this in healthcare. But also we're also seeing these initiatives, great initiatives, by the way, of promoting coding education and skill development that are really strengthening the local talent pool, essential for both domestic and international companies. I think more and more companies now are finding it easier to find that talent in Tanzania. Of course, it's not as available, I think, or maybe the number of skilled laborers in that space is a lot less, for example, than in Kenya. But in Tanzania, we're really seeing that there are these initiatives that are put in place that are really signaling that over the next few years, Tanzania is really going to have developed a pool of talent where you can actually get these software, developers as well in Tanzania. The other trend, which is the B2B and the e-commerce evolution, B2B in e-commerce is really emerging as a significant growth driver for the Tanzanian tech sector. The majority of enterprises, they need to streamline their procurement processes, but also logistics solutions are evolving to ensure that there is efficient delivery across the country, and really addressing the challenges such as, last mile delivery and distribution, all which are extremely crucial for the success of B2B e-commerce. So what exactly does the tech ecosystem look like in Tanzania? What's interesting in Tanzania is that I would say that the dominant city in Tanzania remains to be Dar es Salaam, that accounts for 66.6% of known startups. So there is a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem in Dar es Salaam. Unfortunately, when you go outside of Dar es Salaam, we're seeing that there's a lot less, for example, in Mbeya, Arusha, Morogoro, Dodoma. We are seeing that there are startups, tech startups there, and there are much, much smaller ecosystems there. But I think that with time, what we're going to see is that each center, I think we're going to have centers within Tanzania with specializations. So, for example, agritech might be something that is more dominant in Morogoro or in Mbeya, and so on. And health tech might be more dominant, somewhere else in Arusha, for example. And I think this is what we're really going to be seeing, I think, as time goes. So, of course, Dar es Salaam really remains to be a dominant force, with the 8.8% of known startups nationwide, 66.6% of known startups nationwide, and 13.3 million telecom service customers. So this is really massive. There's a lot happening in Dar es Salaam, and in my experience, a lot of investors that do come and are looking for investment opportunities, and they want to invest in tech startups. Most of the tech startups that we've been working with anyway come from Dar es Salaam. So companies like Cellcom, Tempo Plus, Vodacom are really leading in developing secure solutions for payments, lending. We're also seeing insurance, and this really does contribute to the overall financial inclusion. But we also are seeing that there are specific institutions that are focusing on technology, like the Dar es Salaam Institute of Technology, the College of Information and Communication Technology. These are all bolstering the software development market with skilled graduates, which is, a great thing. And some of the, I guess, success stories is the Sokoine Agri Enterprise Group that won the USAID Feed the Future Challenge, highlighting really the region's potential. And of course, events like that are organized by the Tanzania Startup Association, for example, the Tanzania Startups Association Dodoma Ecosystem Meetup, they really reflect that, you know, growing participation and the growing ecosystems, tech ecosystems within the country. So massive opportunities, massive trends, but now let's kind of look at the investment environment. Unfortunately, when you look at the investment environment, funding in Tanzania's tech sector has fallen by 69% in 2023. That's huge. Of course, you know, generally speaking, funding for startups has gone down, but in Tanzania, it has fallen a lot. And I think the data, at least the known data, has shown that only 2.4% of startups that we know of received around 25 million US dollars in funding in 2023. And this is really down from 80 million US dollars in 2022. So that's a really, really, really big drop. And I think that there's several reasons to this, but we can talk about this after. Let's move on to other kind of key indicators about the environment, the investment environment. We know that 42.9% of all Tanzanian startup investments in 2023, they were really like focused on agriculture, the food tech markets, and this is really highlighting the growth potential for these sectors, agriculture in particular. And of course, from the data that has been shared, I think the notable success stories has been Copagas, for example, although I don't think this was in 2022. I think it was even before 2022. But so this, I think, is not so relevant now. But I think the one that everyone is talking about is Nala, that has managed to fundraise initially 10 million US dollars, and I think this was 2 years ago, and most recently $40 million to basically develop their B2B platform. What we're seeing also is that there's innovation hubs and incubators, more and more innovation hubs and incubators, such as the Ifakara Innovation Hub, amazing, what is coming out of there. But also there is the Stanbic Bank's Biashara Incubator that is basically providing the support to the tech ventures when it comes to helping them develop skills around participating in procurement processes, etc. But, you know, in my experience working with tech companies in Tanzania, and I've worked with tech companies in Tanzania, in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Uganda, Botswana. So the experience is quite varied. I have to say, and I don't know if this is a really popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, because, you know, it's my webinar. But the thing in Tanzania is a lot of Tanzanian startups, this is what I get. Investors that come and they're like, Amne, we want to invest, you know, we're really, you know, hungry. We have like $1 million, or, you know, sometimes $10 million. I'm like, you won't. $10 million for a company in Tanzania is very, very, very difficult to find. But, you know, let's work with smaller amounts. Now, when you're working with those smaller amounts, like $100,000, $500,000, like really small amounts for investment, what we find is that a lot of the Tanzanian companies that think that they're stuck because they don't have investment capital, it turns out actually that they're not stuck because they don't have investment capital or they don't have money. But what we find when we're in the process of the due diligence and, trying to figure out, okay, is this a fit? Can we invest in this? And me included as well, this is also the process that I do as an angel investor. We find that a lot of the time, the companies don't have any systems in place, or very, very weak systems, like companies that don't even have contracts in place, companies that are not even registered, companies that haven't even done any tax compliance, in God knows how long. And even the founders, you tell them tax compliance and they're like, they don't know what that is. So there's a lot of challenges around legal systems in place, right? So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to kind of get them to speed and get them compliant and, get them kind of ready, for all of that. But then also there's so many wasted opportunities, I guess, like things like companies have not registered their intellectual property, and the whole value, the whole essence of their companies even existing is this intellectual property. They haven't registered it. They haven't registered their trademarks. They don't even know what this is. So, and that's like just the legal side of things. Then on the other hand, there's just like this feeling of like just not knowing or not doing marketing and sales, which a lot of founders feel like it's something that they need to outsource. But actually, as a founder, you need to know how to do marketing and sales. So a lot of the time I tell them, guys, you don't need funding. You don't need money. You just need to know how to sell. You need to learn how to sell. You need to know how to do marketing. You need to put your legal systems in place. And so I wrote a book called Business Law for Success. And it's really a book that it's the first book of many books that I'm going to write in the series. It's a series. But this book is really going through all what I've compiled in the last 15 years as a business lawyer. The most important questions and the answers that all entrepreneurs and business owners should know for their business. And in the process of understanding these answers, you're actually building out your systems. Things like, why are you incorporating the company the way you're incorporating it? When should you be a sole proprietor? When should you actually register your company as a limited company? If you are going to register your company as a limited company, what share capital are you going to put in place? If you have co-founders, what is everyone bringing to the table? What should your shareholders agreement look like? What should the share capital distribution look like? What kind of shares should both of these founders have? Like all these things that a lot of founders have no idea about. And this is what inevitably costs them a lot down the line. So you have founders, business owners, entrepreneurs that either they understand that you need a lawyer from day one for business law, and it's really like business law for success. So they understand that you need that kind of business lawyer who's able to build the right foundations for you. But then it's very expensive. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I worked as a lawyer for, I don't know, 25 years, a business lawyer and everything. Yeah, we charge a lot. And I know that it's an issue for founders, for startups, especially bootstrapped startups that don't necessarily have those kind of funds, but you need the legal. So a lot of them are like, well, we don't have the funds, so we're just not gonna deal with legal and just do the bare minimum, which is like the filings with probably a lot of penalties, but your house, which is really the legal systems, right, of your empire, your house, the foundation is just totally in tatters. So it's like you've set yourself up for failure, actually. And even when investors do come and they're like, well, I'm interested in investing in you, they look at all of those things. So they need to be ready. And so this is why I've created this book that is highly relevant, but also we're going to have a platform as well, where you're going to be entrepreneurs and business owners and founders are going to be able to have access to legal documentation, to guides, to guides so that they can understand what is going on. A lot of the time they go and maybe see lawyers and we have our legal jargon and you don't understand anything and you think that you don't need to understand anything. But trust me, you need to have a minimum understanding. As time goes, as your business grows, it's only the most responsible thing that you can do is to understand the legal aspect. You'll never understand it like me, who's been a lawyer for maybe 15 years and have, worked and has accumulated so much expertise, but you need to have some basic understanding, a basic solid understanding of terminologies, of, the reasons why you are doing what you are doing. And so we're going to put a link right now in the chat. Click on that link, sign up, because in the next few weeks, I'm going to be giving so much value on this because I'm so passionate about this. I want to help business owners succeed. I want to help entrepreneurs succeed, founders succeed, because they deserve to. But a lot of the time, they don't succeed because they just don't have their house in order. So sign up on the link, and I'm going to be sending you so much value over the next few weeks, all for free. But also you can buy my book, which is not for free, but it's extremely cheap considering what's in it. I think it's like $3 or something for e-Kindle and like $15 or something. It's like really, really cheap. That would really be able to kind of give you a solid understanding. I think like at least it's a very good place to start. Let's put it that way. And then just be in the community and be with other, entrepreneurs and business owners that are just so excited about building legal systems for growth, building those legal systems for their business so that, they can build those multi-million-dollar empires, because you can't build a multi-million-dollar empire without systems in place. Like, we need to stop telling. I've been to some kind of events where, people, I think maybe they're well-meaning, but probably don't have much business experience, but I think there's a tendency of focusing a lot on branding. That's cute, but that's not all. Like, it's actually, branding is like part of it, but if you can have the most amazing brand in the world and you have so much business coming in, but if you don't have your contracts in order, you don't even know what compliance is, you don't even have any, all those like legal systems and the foundations are not in place, the branding and the marketing is not going to do much for you. So that was my little rant. Let's move on to now looking at the major opportunities in tech. So what we're seeing, we just said that basically 66% of the tech companies that are the known startups that we know that are in the technology sector are in Dar es Salaam. So this actually means that the rural areas are massively underserved. By underserved, but also just access to technology for the rural areas is also an issue. So with 65.1% of Tanzanians' population living in these regions, this really presents a significant opportunity for innovation. A lot of the time, it's normal, right? Dar es Salaam is, the commercial capital and everything. People forget that somehow I think Dar es Salaam can be a little bit saturated, and it is saturated, although there's still a lot of opportunities. But just really going out can be like a massive game changer, What we're also seeing as a major opportunity in tech is also the agriculture sector, with only like 2.4% of the cultivated land that is irrigated. This can really benefit from technology that really optimizes things like rainwater harvesting, tapping into a projected $22.9 billion market. But also the rise of digital businesses is creating a demand for e-commerce platforms online, education providers, and digital content creators, really driven by increased internet penetration. And what we're really seeing also is that the government's commitment to invest in infrastructure, I think they've made a commitment of over 8.3 billion US dollars for development in the financial year of 2022-2023 alone. And this really opens massive opportunities for tech solutions, especially in EPC plus finance processes, but also, you know, areas like renewable energy and the like. So what kind of are like the key when we look also of I can't not do this presentation without talking to you about the regulatory environment. There's still a lot that needs to be done in Tanzania in terms of the regulatory environment. We've seen some positive moves, which is like the Tanzanians fintech regulatory sandbox regulations, which is really something that is so positive especially for fintech startups. And really, I think we need more of these kind of incentives and at least regulatory frameworks, because startups in Tanzania, they need to be given that opportunity for growth. And currently, the taxation system, the regulatory environment is really catered for companies that have very deep pockets. That's just the truth, and it's just the reality. And we know that startups are very tight on money, especially like when we look at the statistics for funding, we know that most startups are bootstrapped. So, and the system, for example, in Tanzania, is that you're already paying taxes from the time that you have registered your company, even though that there was a passing in the in one of the finance acts, I think it was 3 years ago or 2 years ago, that basically gives some form of a relief in terms of tax obligations for companies that have just registered. I think it gives a relief of maybe 6 months, but we know that this is not being applied. You know, so that presumptive tax system is still being applied to startups, which is a big burden. You know, all these compliance, you know, like massive compliance costs in Tanzania to do business, you know, all of those startups are like doing the same as, you know, the Vodacoms and the Tigos and, you know, all these other, you know, the Coca-Colas, which, you know, have very, very deep pockets. And I think this is really problematic. And this really needs to change. When you're looking, let's say, at the tech sector, right? A lot of companies have to get the business license, which they have to get from, let's say, for the payment services, from the BOT. But then in order for you to actually integrate your technology with the telecommunication companies, you have to go and get another license from the TCRA, which is known as the Application Service License, which comes with a whole set of taxes, a whole set of fees as well, a whole set of compliance requirements. And honestly speaking, and also let's not even talk about the time, because for you to get your BOT license, I think we're even talking, at least in my experience, we've maybe gotten this maybe in a period of like 6 months. 6 months is like 6 years for a for a startup. Okay, so and this is a reality. When they have done that, when startups have done that, when startups have spent the money on getting this license, and you know, you're telling them, oh, sorry, this license is not enough. You have to go now to TCRA and start a whole new process. You would think that the TCRA would kind of, it could be just a formality whereby the TCRA would just look at what the BOT has done and, you know, give a go ahead, because you do go through some very stringent requirements when you're applying for your license at BOT. But no, TCRA have their own set of requirements. They have their own process. They have the cost associated. And the process to get an application service license is so crazy and it's so long that sometimes you're talking about 9 months. So you have a company that cannot go to the market. They cannot sell their products, okay? They're just bleeding money. They're spending money for what's 9 plus 6, over 1 year. They're just looking for licenses. That needs to change. That really, really, really needs to change. It hurts startups. And what happens actually is that so many startups, because of that reality, the financial, the time constraint, they just choose not to go and get regulated, and they remain highly informal. It's because of that as well, right? So they remain highly informal, but then on any opportunities for strategic joint ventures, strategic partnerships, funding, they can never be considered for that, you see? So I think there's like a lot that needs to be done in terms of just changing the regulatory environment to really accommodate the startups, which is and the small businesses, right? Which is like the backbone of the economy in Tanzania. It's the backbone of any economy in the world. So these are kind of the things that I touch on. And if you look at our market research reports, but you're going to receive the market overview of the tech sector. It's going to talk about all of these things as well. But yeah, when we're talking about funding, we always say, oh, in Tanzania, there's no funding. And then we kind of blame the startups. Yes, we can blame the startups as well. But I think also the regulatory environment on Tanzanians' end is not the most optimal. It kind of creates an environment whereby startups just feel so intimidated. You know, they might have this game-changing idea, you know, and this game-changing product that they want to get out there, but they just can't because it's a lot. It's a lot of hurdles. It's a lot of steps. It's a lot. So this really needs to change. So yeah, Tanzania's technology sector really presents a significant potential for investors because of all the things that we've talked about: the mobile penetration, you know, internet access, the talent of pool for software development, and I think what we're seeing is also that the strategic approach for investors really just includes this direct investment in promising startups, but also forming partnerships with local players and really just exploring the acquisitions to strengthen market presence. Another thing, though, that I think if we improved the regulatory environment in this aspect, we would see even more private capital come in, is that just in terms of the threshold for notification for equity investments, that is just unbelievably low. I think it's like at 3 billion, which, how much is that in dollars now? I think it's like 1 million, I would say $1 million, $1.1 million. You have to go through, you know, a whole process of notifications and compliance and TRA get involved, and you know, yeah, it's kind of crazy. So this really stops, I think, a lot of investors from investing. And then instead, what we're seeing is that the way to go around that is that investors are basically giving loans, which is quite of a burden for startups as well. Yes, they're getting the money, but you're paying interest. You have to pay the money back almost immediately. You're paying interest as well. This is so different from equity, right? Equity investment. I, as an angel investor, I put in money, but I'm also, it's not only about the money, it's also about the advisory that comes about it, the access, the knowledge, you know, the kind of support that you give to, the mentorship that you give to startups, which is a total game changer. But that's that kind of, and it's done through the fact that you can sit on their boards. But unfortunately, the regulatory environment in Tanzania, it just makes investors be too scared to even sit on a board. So they're like, okay, I'll just give you the money, but it's like they don't act any different than a bank, which is not really the kind of capital that would truly unlock that kind of huge potential, in the ecosystem. It's also really important to just understand the regulatory environment. But also, I think, given all the challenges that I've spoken about the opportunities, but I've also spoken about the challenges. It's really, really important that more stakeholders come up to really address these challenges. Maybe I think now the Tanzania Startup Association, is doing a good job on that, but it kind of feels that they're alone, and maybe they're just representing a faction of the startups. Maybe it's more tech, oriented. But yes, this is actually an issue that impacts all startups in all sectors. And there are more voices and more of a concerted effort and collaborations to deal with these issues, this is where we're really going to see transformation, and the government actually paying attention and moving a lot faster to address some of these regulatory challenges, so as to have a budding ecosystem like the one that we see in Kenya and even in Rwanda. So I think I've spoken a lot. I'm gonna open now the floor to those who have questions. And I'd be more than happy to answer them. You can, I think, raise your hand. Where's the question? I don't see the question. Oh, so there's a question here. Can I buy the book directly from you and not via Amazon? Sure, you can. Actually, I'm having a launch. So if you go to that link, not the Amazon link, but the Know My Legal link that is going to be put up again just now, so that you can know exactly which one we're talking about. Sign up on that link. You're going to get a lot of information, but also you're going to get the dates for the launch where I'll be selling the book. Yeah, so yeah, you can totally get the book from me, and you can even get it signed if you want. Yes, I see that Mr. Patrick Von Arts has, I don't know if it's a question, but hi. In line with the tech development, how is the national grid system developing around Tanzania? That's an excellent question. And actually, we do look at that in our market research report. With all the movement, let's say, we're going now to technology, digital technology. We're talking about AI. The question I think that even the team has been looking at when they're drafting the National Development Vision 2050 is, how do we deal with the energy security issue, which is a huge problem in Tanzania, and in order to really ensure that we are able to be in the global race when it comes to technology. So I think that whilst it's not really about developing the national grid system just for technology, but it's also just developing the national grid system also just for industrialization, which we actually haven't even done in Tanzania, really, right? And which is what, if you look at a lot of the national development plans for Tanzania, this is the vision for Tanzania, is really like industrialization. So I think that the national grid system in Tanzania is being prioritized. And I think that we're going to see a lot more investments come in the energy sector, just so that there is that the energy security issue is addressed, because otherwise there is no development without energy. Thank you. There's another question. There are other questions. Okay, there's 5 questions. Okay, let's do this. All right, so let's go one by one. Can you, sorry? You know what, guys? If you, I mean, you're welcome to just write the question and answers, but you can also raise your hands and we can bring you forward so that you can actually ask your questions. But if you're happy just writing them, that's fine. So let me go through. Can you give us more information about the possibility of an international e-commerce platform to be utilized here? I'm not sure what that means. Do you mean, is it possible to use an international e-commerce platform in Tanzania? I'm just gonna leave that on the side. Maybe if you can raise your hand so that you can actually ask me the question, maybe I might be able to understand it a bit more. Ephraim, does the legal system in Tanzania support and attract investment? What about the regulations, the court procedures, the policies? Are they ready to attract big investors in the tech sector? Excellent question. Well, honestly, I think that it's more of a nuanced thing. So have there been improvements? Yes. The other day I went for the launch of the blueprint the blueprint for business. This is essentially like all the bottlenecks, all the regulations that were identified, and what the government has been doing to address those bottlenecks that have been identified across sector, like tourism, energy, like just across all sectors and across all areas in Tanzania. And you see that there is progress. Now, is that progress fast enough? My opinion is no. But there is some progress, let's say, but we just need to go a lot faster. Right now, does the legal system in Tanzania really support and attract investment in the tech, especially big investors in the tech sector? I would say no. But in the work that we do, to be fair, in the work that we do, sometimes companies need to engage with the government. Companies, before actually entering into the market and investing in the market, need to engage with governments to work on a regulatory framework that would be favorable for their business. Okay, so we're seeing this a lot. Like, for example, now the Tanzania's drive is to get more pharmaceutical companies to come into Tanzania and invest. But currently, we don't have favorable legal systems around that, and challenges around intellectual property protection and enforcement and all that. But I know that the government is working to improve that, I guess, or to get it to a level whereby investors would be comfortable to actually come in and invest. So there's a lot to be done, but I think it's not possible. But I think also investors need to be proactive and actually like engage with the government to invest. I think we saw what's his name, Elon Musk's company, Starlink. The government was basically saying that there's a challenge because in terms of like what Starlink wants to do, it's not regulated, it's not appropriately regulated within our system. But I think that the solution to that is, instead of saying no, this is not regulated by, it's about how do we work around our regulations to actually improve that. So yeah, so I hope I answered your question, but there's the conclusion on that is there's still a lot of work to do. We are seeing that there is work being done around that space. But right now, is it really like optimal for big tech, investors in the tech sector to actually come and invest? I would say no. But what we're seeing is that companies are still looking for strategic joint ventures or strategic partnerships with local existing tech companies, right? So instead of them coming and having a green, putting in, millions of dollars of capital and doing it themselves from scratch, because of the challenges around regulations, etc., some of them do feel confident that they could be able to somehow work in a partnership or, which is minimal risk for them, in that way with locally based enterprises. I hope that answered your question. So William, you kind of brushed on this, but can you outline the crucial requirements investors look for in a startup, specifically agrotech, for them to feel secure in their investment? Okay, so this I think you can find in my book, but I can talk about it briefly. You might feel like I'm brushing on this, but I can only brush on this because, my book is like 290 pages and we only have 4 minutes left, I think, or 1 minute left. But basically, I think some of the things that like investors look at is how are you organized? How are you legally organized? No investor is going to invest in a company that's just a one-man show with a business name and that's it. Because like, what are you investing in? Like, they might give you a loan, but they're not going to equity investment. They're not going to do that. So it's about how organized you are legally, like the legal structure that you have chosen. They also look at the governance structure as well. Is there a governance structure? So it's not about looking for companies that have, a board of directors, like a full-fledged board of directors and, a full-fledged advisory board, because all of that is very expensive. You need to pay your board members as well as your advisors, but it's just about how have you thought about the future. So they'll look at your memorandum and articles of association and see whether you are thinking about that for the future, right? And that currently now you might have a board of, 1-2 board members, for example, and that's enough. It's understood that you're a startup. You don't need to have anything fully complicated, like companies that have been, in the business for 5 years plus, but they look at that. They look at like how secure your interests are in terms of like your customers, your clients. They're going to want to see proper contracts that are secured. They're going to want to see that those contracts are favorable to you, meaning that they're going to look within those contracts, the termination clauses that are required, because the customers is essentially what your business is about. They're going to look at your financials. They're going to see that there is some form of financial reporting that is in place. And again, if you show that you're not necessarily there yet because you can't, and it's fine, you can't afford the accountant and the chief accountant and the auditor and et cetera, but at least that you have one accountant there. You maybe have invested in some software like QuickBooks, for example, that things are in order and that you do have a policy that is looking to the future, a policy for finance that is looking for the future. investors are okay with that. They're okay with that rather than just not having anything, at all. There's a lot that they look into, and I have to go through all the other questions, but get my book, subscribe. I go through a lot of this stuff in terms of what it is that investors are looking for. I'm also going to start a fireside chats in my podcast, where I actually am talking to my investor friends and some clients as well, where they're really telling you like what it is that they want. So subscribe, follow, and you'll get all that information. But for now, that's all I can answer. Next question. What trends do you see in TZ Tech Innovations, TZ Bread and Run, scaling to other markets in sub-Saharan Africa? Do you have any success stories? That's a really good question. Unfortunately, we're actually not seeing as many companies in Tanzania scaling outside of Tanzania. I think for several reasons. A lot of, in order for you to be scaling outside of the Tanzanian market, you need to have systems in place, unfortunately, and solid systems in place. And unfortunately, a lot of companies do not have that. But also to scale, me having had experience in that, scaling outside of Tanzania without funding is extremely difficult, because you're working on that was when I had first, back in 2018, I had ventured out and scaled to Kenya. And that was, I think, in 2019, I think, end of 2018. And I thought I could do it on my cash flow, and I could not do it on my cash flow. But also COVID hit and everything, but a lot of people like using COVID as an excuse. But scaling outside of Tanzania without funding is extremely difficult, and funding is very scarce in Tanzania. So me personally, I'm not seeing so many success stories in terms of like Tanzanian companies venturing out for all those reasons. Does the government of Tanzania aware of their regulatory environment? Is it that so suitable? Yeah, I think that they're aware. I mean, yeah, they are aware. They are aware of the regulatory environment. That's all I'm going to say about that. How do I register my fintech to the sandbox for fintech in Tanzania? Okay, that requires me to go through the regulation, which we really don't have time for that. Please subscribe to the link here. And there's times when I do touch on this, the regulatory sandbox as well from fintechs. But I think most importantly is that for this, you're going to have to read the regulation, try and understand it, try and get a lawyer that is able to kind of assist you on that. We have a startup program where we assist startups at very affordable prices for that. So click the link, hit us up, and we'd be happy to help you on that. Kevin, thank you for your presentation. Is your book contextualized to the Tanzanian business environment, or is it about general business law in any country? That's a very good question. It's about general business law in any country, but looking at common law countries. Why? Because as a business and commercial lawyer, business and commercial terminologies are really the same, and the same principles, especially in common law everywhere, most places. So, and my movement to empower startups and business owners and entrepreneurs is not only focused in Tanzania. We're launching in Kenya, in Uganda, in Botswana, in a lot of places in Africa. It's really about empowering the African business owners because of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. It's coming up, guys, whether we like it or not. It is coming up, and a lot of the companies are not going to be able to take advantage of this massive opportunity because they will not have had their systems in place. And it's very possible to have those systems in place. So yeah, so that's to answer your question. So I think we've gone a little bit over the time. Thank you so much, guys. You're always here and like always following our webinars and stuff. Really like it's just amazing support. We're gonna have another webinar, I think, in 2 weeks' time on another topic. But also, if you sign up to this particular link, which is for Know My Legal, which is like a brand in itself, that really is focused on small business owners, entrepreneurs, and startups. I promise you're going to get so much value out of it. I'll be holding like specific webinars just with regards to that. There'll be my book launch. There's going to be the platform that's going to be launched, which is going to give you access to all the guides, all the guides possible in terms of how to build your legal systems, looking at contracts, tax, like everything, the whole shebang, so that you're really like ready and prepared to scale and to just build that multi-million-dollar enterprise that you so deserve. So thank you so much again for all your great questions as well, for participating, and for all those that have been here. We're going to send you the tech overview as well, I think within 24 hours. And yeah, I look forward to engaging more. Take care, all the best, be blessed. Bye-bye.
Top 10 reasons why to choose Envato Creative Assets in 10 seconds.